Deborah had maintained her morning walk routine for the past 20 years, ever since John, her beloved husband, passed away. It was her way of finding balance in life, a private moment to reminisce about beautiful memories and feel the stillness of the world before a new day truly began. The morning sunlight lingered gently on the treetops, and the fresh, early air carried a slight chill, prompting Deborah to pull her windbreaker tighter. The rustling sound of her jacket accompanied each steady step on the familiar sidewalk. This was Deborah's habit, a peaceful early morning stroll around her tranquil neighborhood in Scottsdale, Arizona, where she had lived and felt deeply connected for many years. At this hour, the streets were still quiet, filled only with the chirping of birds above and the occasional hum of car engines from neighbors starting their day. The houses lining the street remained asleep, with neatly parked cars in garages and well-manicured green lawns. The pleasant morning temperature hinted that Arizona's scorching heat was still a few hours away. Deborah turned onto Millhouse Avenue, her favorite part of the daily walk. Two rows of towering oak trees stretched skyward, their branches interwoven to form a natural canopy reminiscent of a cathedral. The air beneath the trees was always cooler and fresher, bringing a smile to her face as she savored this rare moment of tranquility. But then she saw him. A bicycle lay abandoned on the sidewalk, as if hastily discarded. It was an old mountain bike, its faded green paint chipped and rusted in spots, suggesting that its owner had little concern for its upkeep. The wheel still spun slightly, indicating it had only just been stopped. Next to it, a man paced back and forth, his boots clattering on the concrete. There was something unsettling about his movements. Impatient, erratic, intense. Deborah unconsciously slowed her steps. Her intuition warned her that something about this situation wasn't right. The man repeatedly glanced at his phone, then up and down the street as though waiting for someone. His expression grew more irritated as he noticed her approaching. "Excuse me," Deborah said softly, attempting to pass by. But the man didn't move. He appeared to be in his early 30s, tall and thin, with messy hair and an unshaven face. His worn leather jacket and faded jeans radiated an air of neglect, while his bloodshot eyes and jittery movements suggested a sleepless night. Or perhaps something far more troubling. Instead of stepping aside, he moved directly into her path, blocking her way. "Watch where you're going," he snapped, his voice sharp like a blade. Startled by his sudden aggression, Deborah replied, "I'm just trying to pass through," keeping her tone calm yet firm. "You old people think you own the whole sidewalk, don't you?" he growled. Deborah felt a lump form in her chest. "There's enough room for both of us," she said, trying to sidestep him. But he mirrored her movements, preventing her from passing. For the first time in years, Deborah felt something she hadn't anticipated: real fear. She studied him more closely. His clothes were disheveled, his jaw clenched tight. There was something in the way he loomed over her, like a dark storm cloud ready to burst. "Please," she tried again, her voice firmer this time. "Let me through." The man's lips curled into a mocking smirk. "What did you just say to me?" Deborah's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't meant to provoke him, but the tension between them had shifted, as if a switch had been flipped. In that moment, Deborah knew something terrible was about to happen, something that would change everything. Time seemed to stretch as she stood there, her breath quickening. The man's eyes narrowed into dark slits, and his hands curled into tight fists. His entire posture radiated instability and danger. Instinctively, Deborah took a step back, her mind racing to find the right words to diffuse the situation. "Look, I don't want any trouble," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, even though her heart pounded in her chest. But he wasn't listening anymore. Whatever had ignited his anger had taken hold, and it was too late. "You think you're better than me?" he growled, his voice dropping into a menacing rumble, like the hiss of a fuse about to explode. Deborah opened her mouth to respond, but before she could utter a word, it happened. His fist shot out, a blur of motion she barely registered. The punch landed squarely on her cheek, sending a searing pain radiating across her face. The force of the blow threw her off balance. Her knees buckled, and in one horrifying instant, she fell to the ground. The rough pavement scraped against her palms as she tried to brace herself, her breath knocked out of her lungs. For a brief moment, everything went silent. Deborah lay there, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. Deborah's cheek throbbed, her palms burned, and tears welled up in her eyes. Not from crying, but from the overwhelming shock. The man still stood over her, his chest rising and falling, his lips curled into a twisted, triumphant grin. "Next time, stay out of my way," he muttered, stepping back toward his bicycle as if nothing had happened. Deborah struggled to push herself up. Her hands trembled, and a wave of anger swelled within her chest. How could someone like this exist? How could a complete stranger, someone who didn't know her at all, act so cruelly? "Help!" she whispered, her voice so faint it barely felt like her own. And then she heard it. The sound of a car door slamming shut echoed through the stillness of the morning. That sound felt like a beacon of hope, a promise that she was no longer alone in this dire situation. The neighborhood, once peaceful, now seemed to hold its breath. The ancient oak trees lining Millhouse Avenue appeared to sway with the breeze, as if they too were witnesses to the unfolding events. Somewhere, a bird let out a sharp, high-pitched song, punctuating the tension of the moment. Deborah remained on the cold pavement, feeling the rough concrete scrape against her palms. The sting from the punch still lingered on her cheek, but the physical pain began to pale in comparison to the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Fear, anger, and a faint flicker of hope. Footsteps approached, deliberate, heavy, and growing closer with each passing second. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The voice was not hers. It wasn't one of the neighbors either. It was deep, resolute, and unmistakable. Deborah slowly turned her head, trying to see through the haze of pain and confusion. And there he was, Elon Musk. At first, her mind refused to process the sight. How could this be? Elon Musk, one of the most recognizable figures in the world, stood just a few feet away. He wore dark jeans and a fitted black t-shirt, simple yet exuding understated sophistication. In the soft morning light, his face was set in a stern expression, his piercing eyes seeming to look straight into the soul of the man who had attacked her. His presence carried an undeniable energy, as if the very air around him had shifted, weighted by his influence and power. The man with the bicycle noticed it too. His expression shifted from aggressive to bewildered in an instant. His grip on the bike's handlebars trembled slightly, and for the first time a flicker of fear appeared in his bloodshot eyes. He was used to bullying the vulnerable, but now he faced something entirely different. "Did you just hit her?" Elon Musk's voice cut through the silence, deep and razor-sharp. Gone was the calm demeanor from interviews and conferences. His tone now carried an unmistakable fury. The cyclist froze. The bravado and confidence he had displayed minutes earlier evaporated like morning mist under the sun. Sweat beaded on his forehead as his gaze darted nervously between Elon Musk and his bike, as though calculating the odds of escape. "Mind your own business," he barked, but his voice wavered, stripped of the bravado it once held. Elon took another step forward, closing the gap between them. In the morning light, his shadow stretched long across the pavement, a silent warning. "It's my business now," Elon replied, his voice icy and unyielding. He raised his phone, its screen already recording. "Do you really think you can assault a woman in broad daylight and get away with it?" The man's face turned pale as he realized who he was facing. Not just an ordinary witness, not just a random passerby, but Elon Musk, the man with over 100 million followers on social media, someone who could turn a single moment into global news with the push of a button. Deborah, still sitting on the ground, watched the scene unfold before her like a surreal dream. Her cheek throbbed from the punch, but the pain now felt distant, overshadowed by the unreal situation playing out in front of her. "Apologize to her," Elon commanded, his voice firm and unyielding. His eyes never left the man, and his phone continued to record every second of the encounter. The man hesitated, his jaw clenched in impotent anger. But when Elon stepped forward again, the phone still held high, capturing everything. The man turned toward Deborah and muttered, "I'm sorry." The apology lacked any semblance of sincerity, but that didn't matter anymore. Elon had cornered him, and all three of them knew it. Turning to Deborah, Elon's voice softened. "Are you okay?" Deborah nodded weakly, one hand still cradling her aching cheek. "I'll be fine," she replied, though her voice was shaky. "Don't worry," Elon reassured her. I've got everything recorded. He won't get away with this. Sensing the precariousness of his situation, the man quickly grabbed the handlebars of his bike. The wheels screeched against the pavement as he sped away, leaving behind the clatter of the chain and the acrid smell of burning rubber. Elon didn't chase after him. Instead, he remained where he was, continuing to film until the man's figure disappeared around the corner. Only then did he lower his phone, his expression resolute. "Let me help you to my car," Elon offered, his voice calm but concerned. "You need to sit down." Deborah took the hand he extended, feeling its steady warmth and strength. Each step felt heavier than the last as the shock began to wear off, leaving behind a dull ache that spread throughout her body. The Tesla parked by the curb radiated elegance and modernity. As the car door opened, the scent of new leather and the cool blast of air conditioning greeted her like a comforting embrace. Deborah eased herself into the passenger seat, her body trembling more than she had anticipated. Outside, Elon had already begun calling the police. His voice was clear and concise as he described the attacker, the bicycle, and the direction he had fled. Through the car's window, Deborah caught snippets of his conversation. "Yes, black leather jacket, green mountain bike, heading north on Millhouse Avenue." Inside the quiet, cool interior of the car, Deborah closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to breathe. Despite the chaos of the past few minutes, there was a growing sense of reassurance. She wasn't alone anymore, and justice, she felt, would soon follow. Not long after, the wail of police sirens pierced the morning's quiet calm. The first patrol car appeared at the corner of the street, its red and blue lights flashing like a beacon of justice awakened. A young officer stepped out of the vehicle, his notepad already in hand. His eyes briefly registered surprise upon recognizing Elon Musk, but he quickly regained his professional composure. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked Deborah, his tone calm and concerned. "I recorded the whole thing," Elon said, stepping toward the officer. "You'll want to see this." He held up his phone, the screen displaying the video he had just captured. The officer's face grew serious as he watched the footage, his jaw tightening. "We'll find him," the officer assured, looking up from the phone. Turning back to Deborah, he asked, "Ma'am, would you like to go to the hospital to get checked out?" Deborah shook her head gently. "I think I just need to go home and rest," she replied, her voice a bit steadier now. "I'll drive you home," Elon offered, "and I'll make sure this video gets to the police." He paused briefly, then added, "Maybe the whole world should see this too." Deborah glanced at him, unsure if she had understood the full weight of his words. Yet deep down, she knew her life would never be the same again. As the Tesla glided silently down the street, Deborah stared out the window, watching the familiar houses pass by. Everything looked unchanged. The neatly trimmed lawns, the orderly mailboxes, the trees swaying gently in the morning breeze. Yet somehow everything felt different, as if the world had shifted in the span of just a few minutes. "Why did you help me?" she suddenly asked, breaking the silence inside the car. Elon glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his expression contemplative. "Because no one deserves to go through that," he replied simply, "and because I can." By the time Deborah stepped into her living room, her phone had already begun buzzing incessantly. The sounds of incoming messages and missed call alerts filled the air, creating a chaotic symphony. She slowly sank into her familiar sofa, the soft fabric offering some relief to her aching cheek. "Deborah, are you okay? I just saw the video online." A text from her sister. "Aunt Deborah, I can't believe this happened. Do you need anything?" Her niece messaged, "Ms. Deborah, this is a reporter from ABC News. We'd like to interview you about this morning's incident." A new email notification. She stared at her phone screen, feeling overwhelmed by the sudden wave of attention. Within less than an hour, Elon's video had spread across the internet like wildfire. On Twitter, the hashtag number Justice for Deborah was trending worldwide. Thousands of people were sharing the video, accompanied by outraged comments. "This is unacceptable. That man needs to be caught immediately. No one messes with Deborah and gets away with it. Justice must be served. Elon Musk stepping in to help a stranger? This is why we need more people like him." Deborah scrolled through the posts, her emotions a jumble of disbelief, gratitude, and exhaustion. What had started as an ordinary morning walk had now turned into a moment that not only changed her life, but resonated with people around the world. She took a deep breath, trying to process it all. For better or worse, she was no longer just Deborah from the quiet neighborhood in Scottsdale. She had become the face of something much larger. This is unbelievable. How can anyone hit an elderly person like that? Thank you, at Elon Musk, for stepping in at the right time. This is how power should be used, to protect the vulnerable. Find this man immediately. He cannot be allowed to get away with this. Local community groups in Scottsdale began organizing volunteer patrols, pledging to protect elderly individuals on their morning walks. Deborah's story struck a sensitive nerve in society, sparking widespread discussions about street violence and the safety of senior citizens. The doorbell rang, startling Deborah. When she opened the door, a delivery person stood there holding a bouquet of fresh flowers. It wasn't just one. More and more bouquets arrived, sent by strangers from all over the country. Wishing you a speedy recovery from a child who misses their mom in Boston, read the first card. You've shown us courage. Please don't let fear stop you from moving forward. Morning Walkers Group for Seniors in Seattle. One by one, the vibrant flowers filled Deborah's small living room, bringing warmth and support from across the nation. Major news outlets began covering the story. Images of Deborah and Elon's video appeared on every news broadcast. Experts were invited to discuss issues of street violence, community responsibility, and the power of social media to drive justice. This isn't just a story about an assault, a social commentator said on CNN. It's about how technology and social media can be used to protect the vulnerable. It's about how one recorded moment can spark a wave of change in society. After much deliberation, Deborah decided to share her thoughts in a Facebook post. I never wanted to be famous, especially for something as painful as this. But the kindness and support I've received have shown me that even in darkness, there is always light. I am no longer afraid because I now know that I am not alone. Her post quickly garnered hundreds of thousands of shares and supportive comments. Every encouraging word, every shared story felt like a small brick helping to build a strong wall of protection around her. And somewhere in the endless stream of comments, one person wrote, "Sometimes the worst events bring out the best in humanity." 3 weeks after the incident, the courtroom of Maricopa County was steeped in tension. Deborah sat upright on her chair, her hands resting neatly on her lap. The bruise on her cheek had faded, but the memories of that fateful morning remained vivid in her mind. The attacker, now identified as Michael Peterson, 32, stood a few meters away. In a borrowed light gray suit provided by his public defender, he appeared much smaller than he had on that day. Gone was the aggression. His expression now carried only regret and fear. Elon Musk sat in the back of the courtroom, dressed simply yet radiating a serious demeanor. His presence seemed to hold the room in a collective breath. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, aware that every moment in this trial could become global news. Your Honor, the prosecutor began, her voice steady and clear. This is a case of a deliberate assault on a senior citizen. This act not only caused physical harm, but also left lasting emotional scars. Footage from Elon Musk's phone was displayed on the large screen. The courtroom fell silent as the vivid images replayed the moment Peterson struck Deborah. A few spectators turned their faces away. The defendant did not just assault an innocent woman, the prosecutor continued. He attacked the very values that our society holds dear: respect, compassion, and the right of every citizen to feel safe. When it was his turn to speak, Peterson stood, his shoulders slumped. Your Honor, his voice quivered, I have no excuse for my actions. I lost control, and I did something unforgivable. Turning toward Deborah, tears streaming down his face, he said, Mrs. Deborah, I am truly sorry, not just for the punch, but for the fear and pain I caused you. I will carry the weight of this regret for the rest of my life. Judge Sarah Martinez gazed at Peterson with a stern expression. Violence is never the answer, she stated firmly. Your actions have not only harmed Mrs. Deborah, but also shaken the trust of this community. The sentence was handed down. 200 hours of community service at a senior center, participation in a 6-month anger management program, and a significant restitution payment to Deborah. Deborah's story had sparked waves of change in the community. Volunteer groups called Companions for Walks were formed, organizing group walks for seniors. Free self-defense classes were launched, and security cameras were installed along popular walking routes. Sometimes from the worst experiences, the best outcomes emerge, Deborah shared in an interview after the trial. I've seen the beauty of human kindness, of care, and of people standing together to protect one another. Elon Musk tweeted after the trial. Justice must not only be served, but also seen. Always stand up for others when you can. A small act can lead to big change. Deborah continued her morning walks, but she was no longer alone. A group of new friends all around her age now accompanied her regularly. They chatted, laughed, and enjoyed the crisp morning air together. Deborah's story had become more than just an account of an assault in the pursuit of justice. It served as a reminder of the power of community, the importance of standing up for what is right, and humanity's ability to turn painful experiences into a catalyst for positive change. Every day we have the opportunity to be someone's hero. It might not be in the way Elon Musk stepped in, but through small actions, a caring glance, a helping hand, or simply speaking up when witnessing something wrong. Dear friends, Deborah and Elon Musk's story has touched the hearts of millions. It's not just a tale of violence and justice. It's a testament to the power of kindness and the spirit of community. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if you witnessed a similar situation? How can we build a safer community for the elderly? How has this story inspired you? Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss more meaningful stories like this. Together, we can make a positive change in society.